Thought we were going to be leading the show with this one. It is noteworthy, of course, in itself, but SBF, the biggest story. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. Barry Weiss now releasing the latest element of the Twitter files. This is from January 8th. The reason we're going to spend some time here is January 8th was the day that Donald Trump was officially banned for all time from Twitter. It was the total deplatforming along with the beginning of the Parler saga. And one of the things that we found really interesting in the correspondence that Barry releases here in the Twitter files is the total capricious nature through which they arrived at this process. So as you saw, in that screenshot, directly, Twitter executives were admitting, quote, it's pretty obvious he's going to try and thread the needle of incitement without violating the rules. Other staffers were pressuring, saying, quote, we have to do the right thing and ban this account. And I think the reason why that's important is that on the morning of January 8, Crystal, it was a tacit acknowledgement. Not one tweet by Trump had technically violated their terms of service. And from that day forward, it was basically social pressure from within the company that led them to rewrite their rules to ban Trump and arrive at the decision to do so.
Yeah, because what we had learned up to this point is they had basically gotten an agreement from Jack that, okay, if he's got a strike against him, if he violates any of the terms of service at all, we're allowed to ban him. And so they're closely watching, hoping that he's going to step over the line. There's a kind of internal debate where they're trying to really make a stretch case for like, maybe this theoretically could have been an incitement to violence. And even internally, they're like, no, there's no way you can really argue that either of these tweets actually violates the terms of service. So then even though, you know, they had already kind of laid out this one-off path of we're going to ban him if he violates any of the terms of service again, he doesn't even meet that threshold, but they still decide to go ahead and ban him. Yeah, so let's go to the next one, and it actually shows you the level of histrionics that were going on in there. Yoel Roth, of course, says, multiple tweets have quoted the banality of evil, suggesting that people implementing our policies are like Nazis following orders. Just amazing the way that they see themselves on the morning of January 8th. Let's go to the next one there, please. A few minutes later, Twitter employees on the, quote, scaled enforcement team suggest Trump's tweet may have violated Twitter's glorification of violence policy. That's if you are able to interpret the phrase American patriots to refer to the rioters. So again, they are just coming up with scheme after scheme. They're like, well, he didn't violate this rule. He didn't violate that one. Well, maybe we can get him on this one. My own favorite was actually this one dissenter in the chat. We don't actually know who it is, but a very poignant comment that they made. This was actually January 7th, the day before. Put it up there. When he says, or she says, maybe because I'm from China, I deeply understand how censorship can destroy the public conversation, to which he or she is immediately shot down. I understand this fear, but I think it's important to understand censorship by government is different than censorship of the government. The First Amendment in this country with similar concepts exists specifically to prevent the government from silencing people, implicitly then saying, well, we are not subject to that. Now, technically, of course, that's true. Libertarian argument.
I mean, it's a ludicrous argument also, because on the one hand, they're trying to say that they have this immense social responsibility, almost like a quasi-government institutional responsibility. And on the other hand, they're like, well, we're not the government, so we can do whatever you want. I'm like, well, you can't have it both ways. Like, you either do have social responsibilities, a la government, meaning that you need democratic input, or you don't. And that means that, you know, you're the government and, you know, you're one of those which should be governed by the will of the people. They really are just trying to split both ways here.
People use even outside of Twitter, they use this like, well, the First Amendment is just about the government. Like, this is a private company. They can do what they want. And it's like, yeah, we all know they can do what they want. The question is, number one, should they be able to do whatever they want? Should you have power concentrated in the hands of whether it's Jack or whether it is Elon? Like, is that a good state of affairs? That's question number one. And then it's also a question of, okay, we accept that you have this power, how should you be wielding it in a way that is most consistent and, best ultimately for our democracy and for free speech. And I see that both of these arguments being used very selectively and very hypocritically, depending on people's level of comfort with the current head of Twitter. So when it was Jack and his team making these decisions and liberals felt more comfortable, then they were all in on the it's a private company, they can do what they want. And now that it's Elon doing it, there's a totally different attitude towards it, and both sides have sort of flipped on this one. But, it wasn't just, I think this is important because the international context, not just from this one Twitter employee who was I'm from China and I kind of get why this is really a problem. The decision to ban Trump really landed with a lot of dismay from leaders around the world. And these aren't people who were buddy with Trump, right. But they also could understand from the outside looking in, you're banning the president of the United States. You are banning a world leader. This is a major issue. Let's go ahead and put this next piece up on the screen. They say, Barry says, outside the United States, Twitter's decision to ban Trump raised alarms, including with French President Emmanuel Macron, German Prime Minister Angela Merkel, and Mexico's President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador. Macron told an audience he didn't, quote, want to live in a democracy where the key decisions were made by private players. I want it to be decided by a law, voted by your representative, or by regulation, governance, democratically discussed and approved by democratic leaders. That is a very accurate reflection of my view of how these things should be handled as well. And like I said, I think it's important to remember, if you're able to take yourself out of the American context, there was a lot of global concern from world leaders about how this decision went down and what it meant for democracy.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, it just shows you that it was a world important ramification decision. And they also show directly, put this up there, that in June of 2018, Twitter specifically decided, I think correctly, not to take down the Iranian Ayatollah's tweet that, quote, Israel is a malignant cancerous tumor in the West Asian region that has to be removed and eradicated. It is possible and it will happen. They didn't delete the tweet or ban the Ayatollah specifically, and Jack defended it for this reason, that the words of the Ayatollah are within the public interest. They belong in the public sphere. You can find it abhorrent, you can find it disgusting, but we are better off understanding and knowing the direct thoughts of Ayatollah Khomeini or Donald Trump or any, I mean, I would even say, hey, Kim Jong-un, you should join Twitter, any of these people.
Yeah.
Just to be able to get some sort of insight. I mean, I remember thinking that during Trump. I was just what an extraordinary insight into the leader of the free world's brain that you get to see every single day, for better or for worse.
It's not always fun.
It. Yeah, I often hated it.
Yeah.
That said, I mean, look, transparency, input, and knowledge of what's happening there, that's a rare thing that we have in the year 2019. I was and I think we're obviously generally better off for it. A lot of Americans saw those tweets. They got to decide fully. I think they knew exactly who Donald Trump was when they cast their vote, either for him or for against him. I think that's a good thing, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah. And, that also just underscores how inconsistently applied any of their rules were. What they would do is they would basically make a decision. And by they, I pretty much mean Yoel Roth and Vijaya Gotti, who seem to have been really driving this train, at least based on the files that have been revealed. And I would like to say, I would like this whole process better if they just sort of put everything out and let other independent journalists be able to go through it and, see what storylines and what information is relevant. And that's something that Jack has called for as well. But, it really shows you that they would basically make a decision and then they would try to come up with some justification to back it up. It wasn't like we're applying our terms of service consistently and here's what they say and here's how the tweet violates it and now here's our decision out the other end. Listen, those decisions, even if you are trying to follow what your rules and what your previous precedents in terms of service are, there are going to be gray areas. It's going to be complex. I'm not saying that it would be cut and dry. But what really comes through consistently in these Twitter files is they are making it up as they go along. based on their own ideological inclinations, based on what they feel is public pressure, based on what they feel is employee pressure, and then trying to come up with a rationalization after the fact. And they even basically acknowledge as much. But it's never been more clear than with the banning of Donald Trump when you have other leaders like the leader of Iran who's out there saying death to Israel, and you're like, yeah, that's fine. And you have this very sort of coded call for patriots and things like come to DC, it's going to be wild. And that gets you ultimately banned. So that's the piece that I think is really clear. And again, the bottom line here that I always want to come back to is whether you like Jack more or whether you like Elon more, wherever you find yourself on the ideological spectrum, I actually think Macron put it really well. Do you feel comfortable having this kind of power to control speech concentrated in the hands of a few with zero democratic accountability? To me, that is the core of this whole question. And then also the piece that we discussed yesterday about how Twitter was in literally weekly meetings with the FBI. So you have a completely unaccountable process being backed up and pressured by the government, none of which we knew at the time. It's a very, very disturbing set of events.
Absolutely. And just to show you the slippery slope, the very next day, this is actually my favorite part of the Twitter files, put the final one up there, they decided they were going to start eagerness to ban, quote, medical misinformation as soon as possible. So the moment that they got Trump, they immediately started going after the COVID regime, or started enforcing the COVID regime on their platform, and to immediately institute more censorship on the COVID front. So I actually, like I've said previously, one of the Twitter files I'm looking forward most to, it actually has more to do with COVID, the lab leak theory, some of the Alex Berenson casework, and more. And I think that we are all going to find out a hell of a lot about that.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.